Greetings everyone, my name is Etterville, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Make a Good Mega Man Level Contest 2, or Maximal 2 for short. During the last part, I completed the 4 worst stages in the game, which were located in Tier 1. So in this part, I'll be completing the rest of the stages in Tier 1. But before I do that, I'm back at Mix and Match because I forgot to collect the Noble Nickel in this stage, which I foolishly missed because it was flickering between this top enemy. Just get by here and collect it. As I mentioned back in part 1, every stage may have up to about 5 Noble Nickels scattered throughout it, and the stage teleporter will tell you where the Noble Nickels are, thankfully. And now I have the crown for the stage. Now keep in mind though, even if you die or exit out of the stage, once you collect the Noble Nickel, it's permanently collected, thankfully. Anyways, onward to 76th place. The Fall by Willhart, with a score of 9.2. Well, we have nowhere else to go but up, I suppose. But then again, we haven't encountered any of the judges' least favorite stages yet, so the pain will be coming soon enough, especially in Tier 3, but that's in about a few parts. Alright, on to The Fall, where we have Shadow Man's tile set. Somehow we have the hitbox here that's unshaded for some reason. And as always, I'm going to be commenting on the levels, seeing what they do wrong, what I like about them, what they do right, and some ideas for improvement. But of course, because this is Tier 1, I'm mostly going to be listing out complaints and mostly going to talk about what makes these stages so bad. Let's take the upper route, shall we? Really, there's no difference we're taking this route. At least it's a little bit better because we actually have a tile set and we have different music other than Galaxy Man's team. And now we're falling into lava. Normally this would have killed you in Shadow Man's stage and the rest of the stages that do use this lava, but no. We just fall under there and we survive. And for some reason we just fall out of the lava from the bottom. Apparently it's like Jello or something. Well, at least we got a free E-Tank and Bolt. Those will be useful. These carry on between stages, so these will be helpful in the tougher stages to come. Oh, I am dreading a few stages in the future. Thankfully none of them are in Tier 1 or Tier 2. Because of how the stages were organized based off of ranking or score, the most difficult stages in this game are actually, personally speaking, in Tier 3, at least the first difficulty jump. Also, here's an invisible floor. At least the stage designer wasn't so jerkish to put invisible spikes or something. Also, thank you for telling me to go up there. Instead, I'll just use a super arrow. This is one of the reasons why I love the super arrow in this game. Because it pauses in mid-air for a while, you can effectively use it as a temporary stepping ladder. And completely circumvent the challenge this way. See ya. Of course, going on the bottom wouldn't kill me either. Well, this was still a very below average stage, but at least it wasn't horrible like some of the previous stages, and unlike Mix and Match, we actually had a tile set, unique music, and at least the enemies, it didn't spam enemies. But of course there weren't that many screens, so it faltered in that regard. Yeah, it started out pretty decently with the first set of enemies, but it just felt like it fell apart. The beginning of the stage felt like a nice intro to a better stage, but then I don't know what happened. Also, I don't know what the X indicators were supposed to be for. And the fall itself was a lot easier than expected. We just fall in Shadow Man's Jello lava or something. It sucks, yes, but at least it's not frustrating. It's just poorly done. And it's especially in the second half of the stage, the level design is random, specifically after the fall. I wish the fall was a little more well designed. At least it wasn't like the first level in Magma 1, which was just a blank fall. And of course, here's A Spark's next comment. To be fair, this wasn't as bad as the previous 4 stages, so at least it isn't too much of an issue. Then again, Ace is alluding to the much tougher stages coming in the future. Oh yeah, and these enemies are called Up and Downs. Unfortunately, this one is stuck in the ground and really wants to escape out of this horrific area, You can see all of the up and downs that are stuck in the generators. This kind of reminds me of the background from Tier 4 of Magma 1. Alright, in 75th place is Ancient Tomb by NinjaUmbreon, or Umbreon, with a score of 10.4. Gariri gave us a score of 0 for some reason. That's his lowest score yet, I believe. I wonder why. Okay, we have the same introduction as Pheroman stage, I suppose. And thankfully it only has one exit, I think. Oh, if I also recall correctly, Tier 1 is the shortest stage, is the smallest tier in this game. It has the least number of levels. Tier 10 is the longest tier in this game, specifically in terms of the number of levels there are. After all, Tier 10 contains the 10 best levels in the game, but we won't be going to there until about 15 or 20 parts later. Okay, this reminds me of the introduction to Pheroman stage, almost exactly actually. It's been quite a while since I last played Mega Man 4, but even then, I still recognize this intro, especially when I played Mega Man 215D, but even then, that immediately had some more changes. Yeah, I should be utilizing the Slash Claw more, especially because of how powerful it is. But you need to get in front of enemies before you can use it properly. But it does pierce through enemy guards and shields, so it is useful in that regard. Plus it doesn't require that much special weapon energy to use anyway. Yeah, this feels almost exactly the same as Pheroman's stage from the original game. We even had this mini-boss, I believe. There are some changes in terms of what enemies are there, but it feels almost like an exact same run-through. And this was, I believe, to be a checkpoint room as well. We even have these skeleton enemies like before. Oh neat, the damage pop-up actually shows us when we do 1.5 points of damage. I was worried it wouldn't show that. I was worried it would just round down the damage, but no, it actually showcases the different amounts of damage you can take. Of course, I can also make this segment a lot easier on myself if I just use the Sakugarne. This was a lot harder in Mega Man 2.5D because I didn't have Spike Guard. Yeah, I don't really see any difference with the stage. Maybe there are some minor differences, but for the most part, it's the same. Oh, and by the way, I disabled the timer and FPS counter on the bottom and bottom right, respectively. I felt they were a bit distracting, and I accidentally left them on in the previous part. Okay, that's a bit different. We have those enemies from Chargeman stage. That's neat. So there is some difference at least. But for the most part it's the same. I guess that's why Gariri gave this stage a 0 out of 10 for plagiarism. Oh, and by the way, to illustrate what I mentioned in the previous part of this being a semi-blind playthrough, sure, I did watch Nathaniel Hoover's, aka Flashman85's livestream about this game, but it's been several months ago, so I don't remember most of the stages, especially ones in the lower tiers like this one. I only remember some specific levels, like the 2 worst levels in this game, as well as some of the tougher stages in Tier 3, as well as some of the best levels. And that was kind of an anticlimax because I expect to fight Pheroman here, especially because Pheroman is part of the dev kit, I believe. So kind of a missed opportunity there. I mean, this would be a perfect place to fight Pheroman. At least it was a normal no-death run. Okay, let's see what the judges have to say about it. Oh, Pyro is right, it is a Platinum edit. I needed to see confirmation of that. Okay, the beginning part is a bit different, but... Oh, is that what the train, that enemy from Chargeman's stage called? The Rem Bakun? The one dropping missiles? Oh yeah, it was actually added to the dev kit. That makes it even more disappointing. You're right, Jupi. I mean, he could have the level designer could have even enabled the hard mode of Pheroman, or at least modified him just a little bit, but no. Huh, I never had that problem. Maybe it was a problem back in the dev kit. It was fun to play, sure, but it's basically a Pheroman stage. Okay, so that's why it's plagiarism. 0 points, okay. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this was also a dev kit level. That explains how the level author easily cloned it, I suppose. Oh, A-Spark, classy. Never stop posting these comics. I wish A-Spark used more comics in the higher tier levels. That would have been a lot more fun. He only really used it on some of the lower tier and more difficult levels. Oh, and wait a minute. That was the last level of this tier, never mind. Well, I was right, after all. Tier 1 is the shortest tier with 6 levels. The rest of the tiers outside of Tier 10 I believe have 8 stages each. So just like in Magma 1, at the end of every tier is a boss fight, excluding Tier 10 I suppose. So it's time to visit the Tier 1 boss. What boss will meet us at the end of this horrible tier? The bottom of the barrel? Let's see. Okay, now we have glitchy graphics. Now the background's glitching out. Some bugs. Mega Man, I think there were a lot more than some. Oh, hey there, Milk. That's a neat way of monopatriizing the boss. Alright, this is Milk from Snow on Pyro's fangame Square Root of -1. Like I said before, because this isn't a dev kit boss, I will be fighting them Buster only. So, Milk fights about the same way as it did back in Square Root of -1, which I will LP in the future, I promise. And there's a hard mode version of the Milk fight as well, I believe. Okay, you can fire a bouncing Rinka, as indicated by the rainbow shape. Then can fire a spread shot of about 10 of them, fly to the other side of the screen and fire all those milk shots. And then fire a spread of those Rinkas, and you can fire a milk cannon upwards, sending you upwards. And it keeps bouncing around. Relatively an easy boss fight, but it's befitting of the Tier 1 boss. It's a nice sense of self-deprecation on this part of Pyro. Specifically for Square Root of -1. I suppose it makes sense, because Milk is the simplest boss fight and the simplest in design, so it fits the Tier 1's rather glitchy aesthetic. Well, that finishes up Tier 1, I suppose, so let's get out of here. As you can see here, we have the crown of Tier 1 because we completed Tier 1. Well, at least the scientist apologized. And I don't blame him, sometimes you do have to code in those really awkward times. Let's see if there are any new Road Masters who are here. But before I move on to Tier 2, because I have enough time in this part, let me pay a visit to the shop and see if there's anything new there. Or rather, if there's something I can purchase. Okay, E-Tank, M-Tank, Charged Buster upgrade, which is one of those upgrades I alluded to that breaks a lot of the game. Or at least a lot of parts of the game, not all levels. Drop Rate, Converter, Met's Helmet, Skull Amulet, Uncharged Buster upgrade. I will want to buy the Uncharged Buster upgrade first, followed by the Converter. Both of those will be really useful, especially the Converter, then eventually the Skull Amulet, which acts kind of like the Spike Guard. Or Undershirt. Then eventually I'll get the Drop Rate upgrade, the Met's Helmet, and the Charged Buster upgrade last. It makes sense why it costs 900 bolts, because it really breaks a lot of the stages. Not all of them. In fact, if I recall correctly, the Charge Shot upgrade was nerfed a bit, so now it doesn't deal as much damage as it does to custom bosses. Before, it dealt the same base upgraded amount of damage to all bosses, dev kit and custom ones, which really destroyed some of the custom boss fights. So let's see if Otto has something else to say. Well, it has started. Sadly, we don't have any bottles, but it makes sense. After all, you use baseballs and similar to destroy the bottles. Oh, hello there, Flashman. And he's alluding to the thing I mentioned in the previous part. Tier 2 is on the other side of the city for some reason. So yeah, all the tiers are in non-linear order. We will be visiting Tier 5 eventually. Here's the costume shop. Here are all sorts of costumes for different characters. This is Errol from The Adventure of Link, aka Link 2. This is from Final Fantasy, the Red Mage costume. I suppose this is a reference to Final Fantasy 1 where the magic stat was broken or something. I guess this is a reference to Mega Man 7's intro. This is actually a reference to Magma 1, where Concrete Man was dressed up as Kalinka. Now Kalinka is dressed up as Concrete Man. Now in the costume shop, you can purchase costumes, unlock and purchase costumes, which you can then put on for different aesthetic effects. This is especially useful for if you want to increase the replayability, as well as some other fun stuff that I will be exploring in the future. So as you can see here, we can unlock the Proto Man costume, base costume, roll costume, only 3 costumes so far. We'll unlock more in the future as we get more energy elements and unlock more noble nickels. I will be trying out some of the other costumes in the future, that's for sure. Here's the access to Tier 4. As you can see here, as we go above the tiers, there are actually more noble nickels. Once again, I reiterate my earlier point of why Tier 1 didn't have that many noble nickels. Oh hey, a dojo, let's pay a visit to it. I know I'm exploring a lot of locations, but still, I want to stop and smell the roses. In the description, I will put some timestamps for skipping to the entrance of Tier 2. Okay, we have a boss rematch here. And I believe that means it will unlock more of these rooms as we get more noble nickels. So essentially, this is a boss rush from all the dev kit bosses. I believe this is the second arena, which pits us against all of the boss fights in this game, custom and dev kit. And this is a true arena or something. Oh yeah, and here's the dojo where you can actually practice your weaponry, and you can also see how much DPS your weaponry does. That's really useful actually, having a DPS meter. So now you can see which weapons are more powerful than others. Like you can see here, the Mega Buster, sure, if you're fast enough you can deal up to 9 DPS or 8 DPS, but the Hornet Chaser is a lot faster, especially if you get close to it, with 16 DPS. The Jewel Satellite is rather on the weak side, Grab Buster also kind of on the weak side. Triple Blade has an insane DPS of over 20, makes sense. Flash Stopper 7 DPS because the training dummy doesn't respect time stop. Slash Claw second most at 12 DPS. This is more theoretical because enemies aren't shooting at me. The Wheel Cutter at a constant 14 DPS, so second best. Sakugarne about 8 to 12. Rush Coil the same. The Wire Adapter is pretty useless. Super Arrow can go pretty high as well. It's actually in fact, the Super Arrow is actually the second highest DPS weapon if you're close up. I didn't expect that to happen. But of course, the highest DPS weapon, I believe, is a Triple Blade followed by Super Arrow. That's kind of unexpected. I didn't expect that order. I expected the Triple Blade to have the highest DPS, but not the Super Arrow to have the second highest. But this is of course all theoretical, and only really works if you're right next to enemies. I guess we'll have to revisit this area once we get a VIP pass. Well, Burner Man, you tried burning down the forest back in Mega Man in Base. I find it strange though why he was in the forest stage, but oh well. Here's Tier 3. Oh, and there's Tier 2, the below average levels. Before in Tier 1 we had the absolute horrible levels, now we're in the sewers is for the at least below average levels. So without further ado, let's enter this. We have 13 exits, or 13 energy elements, and 6 noble nickels. We finally have more, but it's still kind of on the lower side. This game has over 220 noble nickels, so we'll be hunting for them for quite a while. And the noble nickels do unlock more stuff other than costume pieces, but I'll get to that more after I complete Tier 2. And we're back in the sewers. This reminds me of the sewers in Magma 1, although that was more for Tier 1, now it's for Tier 2. And Heatman directly references that. The sewers do look a lot better here than in Magma 1. Alright, let's go on. And 74th place is Wily Tower by Shidy, with a score of 11.6. Let's see what this level has to offer. Okay, neat, we have the Mega Man 10 Wily Fortress team. And we have this Ben K greeting us. At least we have custom music, but the background is pitch black. I don't think I can make this jump, so I'll just use this. Okay, we skip past that. That's a little bit unfair, though. We have 2 routes. I'm gonna take the right route and see what it has to offer. Okay, I guess we're going down here. Okay, we have a spike drop. Fine with me. And... okay, we're fighting Voltman. Some of the Dev Kit bosses were taken from the less common Mega Man games. After all, this is Voltman from Mega Man DOS. He kinda reminds me of the fight against him in Mega Man DOS Remake, with his Volt Buckler. Because my Mega Buster deals so much damage, I think I'll just use the Mega Buster to defeat him. At least he's rather predictable, and he takes 5 points of damage from the charge shot, which is rather high actually. One more shot should do him in. Okay, that was the end of Voltman, but the stage isn't over yet. That was just a midway point. I would have liked if there was actually a background here, but okay. And of course, because this engine has infinite lives, just like in Mega Maker, collecting an extra life will refill you back up to max. Good thing I didn't slide down there, otherwise I would have died. Okay, Komusa Man. He's from Mega Man in Base 2, Challenger from the future, for the Wonder Swan. It's a rather unknown Mega Man title, but it is a classic title after all. I do appreciate the engine actually introduced other bosses from different Mega Man games, even Mega Man games that aren't that commonly known. Really appreciate that. Well, okay, I don't remember that being there. We have to destroy the flames to actually get by him. Oh, you know what, I'm just gonna use the special weapons. Okay, Grab Buster, thank you. This makes it a lot easier. After all, like I said before, for the Dev Kit bosses, I'll mostly use special weapons. And that was rather foolish of me, I should have used an E-Tank. Then again, I never fought Komusa Man before, so I guess it makes sense. And there are hard versions of the bosses you can enable that were included in the Dev Kit. Thankfully, this is the easier version. In fact, I would say he's about the same difficulty as Voltman. But the stage isn't over yet, so I guess this is like a mini boss rush stage. At least I'm liking the design more than the Tier 1 stages, all of them actually, but I would still like to have a non-solid black background. Come on, I mean even Mega Maker had the option for that, and most people actually made backgrounds. Okay, now we're introduced to these Plant Man platforms. Okay, and there are no enemies here, so it's relatively fine. And they're being introduced in a relatively fair fashion, so I'm not complaining. That's definitely a boon for the stage. Here's something a bit different. If we jump off of it, it'll rotate, so it's kind of odd why they placed it there, but I suppose it isn't that bad. Oh, hello, Quint. He was also part of the engine. Quint's weakness, I believe, is also the Sakugarne, actually. Kind of hilarious why that would be. Okay, let's just use that. If I can access it. Kinda funny that Quint's weapon is a Sakugarne, but he's also weak against the Sakugarne. It's kind of like Metal Man syndrome all over again. So let's see what the judges have to say about this stage. Yeah, I didn't mention this earlier, but it seems that this stage is rather devoid of enemies for some reason, outside of the first part of the stage. But in total, there were only, I think, maybe 6 or 8 enemies at total, but we had 3 or 4 boss fights. And most of these screens were rather featureless. And we had unmodified engine bosses. The level editor could have at least temporarily or minorly modified one of the dev kit bosses, or used hard mode or something. And yeah, could have at least put some background. I'm not sure if the stage was only 40 seconds long, but I suppose I'm taking the slower route, smelling the roses. That's strange. At least I didn't die over there. That would have been annoying. Yeah, there is a better boss rush stage coming up, I believe, in the future. But not to mention the Wily capsule rematch stage in Magma 1. That was definitely better as well. Thankfully I didn't encounter the camera glitch. At least it's nice to see Voltman and Kamusa Man outside of their less common respective games. And Ace is right, there was nothing to write home about this level, but even with all the level being rather bland and very subpar, it was still much better than all of the levels in Tier 1. It was not frustrating at all, and at least the boss fights were fun, they weren't too frustrating. The water is greenish colored, so I'm not sure how good it is. Oh boy, we're coming up to one of those levels I mentioned. In 73rd place is Airflow Hubble by Concord Butterfly, with a score of 13.4. This is Gariri's least favorite stage. However, Gariri still gave the stage a 14 out of 50, so keep in mind though that even if a stage is one of the judges' least favorites, it isn't necessarily their least scored ones. After all, I know Gariri gave one stage a 0. Remember Fairman's plagiarized stage? That one was a 0. Wow, Ace gave this stage a 1 and it isn't his least favorite. Well, I already know in advance what is Ace's least favorite stage, but we'll get to that in the future. I thought something glitched out there. Oh yeah, for some reason it didn't show that. And also, if you notice that when a stage is one of the people's least favorites, their head will be rotating around it with an X. In this case, this is Gariri's icon. Okay, let's go to Airflow Hubble. Oh boy, this stage. And it also has a skip teleporter because of how frustrating it is. What made the judges give certain levels skip teleporters is based off of how difficult, long, and how frustrating they are. In this case, this is one of the more frustrating levels. I faintly remember this from Flashman's stream. Okay, we start off with the rain pushing us backwards as long as we're jumping. And this info box contains no message for some reason. Okay, let's see what horrors this stage has to offer us. First we get rushed in by all these enemies. And we have all these Apache Joes. Let me kill off this big enemy first, then I'm gonna try killing off this Apache Joe. Unfortunately, it's in a bad position, I can't aim at it properly. There we go, at least the wire adapter makes it minced meat out of it. Let me take care of the rings. Oh boy, these. The Apache Joes are the main problem because they're so hard to hit. Without the Hornet Chaser, I presume, and they deal so much damage too. Well, I need to go through this stage again, I suppose, and darn, I really wish they'd actually dropped the health pickup there. Okay, let's try this again. The main problem is, of course, all those Apache Joes, because they're so difficult to hit. Of course, I could just use the wheel cutter like that. The other problem is the fact if I take damage and I'm in the air, I get knocked right back down. That's the other problem, especially with these Mets. As long as I'm pointing the other direction, don't get knocked back in the correct way, I'm okay. Oh boy, we have a spike trap over here. I will want to get that E-Tank though. Sneaky, I need to be careful here so I don't destroy the ground. If I destroy those blocks, I'll be trapped and get hit by those spikes. Is this the one? Oh good, it actually deals 3 points of damage each, thank you. Unfortunately I need to go left. At least the stage designer was kind enough to give me all these special weapons. Oh no. And these metal blocks are actually resistant against the metal blade. Oh whoa, I'm using the tank right over here. I have enough spare tanks, so I might as well do it. At least we were out of the hard part of the stage, the first hard part, and now we have a blind drop segment. Without any spikes, actually. The reason why the previous part of the level was so difficult was because the rain pushing you back when you were jumping or being knocked down, and also because of all the Apache Joes. A little bit of enemy spam here, but nothing too bad. The Apache Joes weren't that bad over here, it's when you're inaccessible that's the problem. At least you can also one-shot them too. Also another annoying thing is that if you do get hit while sliding, you will take some knockback damage and get temporarily stunned, unlike in Mega Maker where you can constantly keep moving. Okay, let's kill this Cannon Joe. The wall blasters. Really, the stage feels like it's going in reverse difficulty order, with the initial part of the stage being harder than the first. I mean harder than this part. Now we have this segment with all the caterpillars. I get a feeling I need to get on the top one. Also another hard part is the fact it's kind of difficult to see where these Gutman's platforms dissipate or decide to throw you down. Oh, and there was no difference from the top and bottom pat. Oh boy, now we're introduced to the Met dispensers. Okay then, that's not how I expected to do that challenge. The fans aren't being helpful at all. Oh no, it's one of these segments. I better get my flash stopper. Especially with stuff like this happening. Well, I didn't realize the song was going to say hey over there. I also didn't realize that the conveyor belt was going to drop me over there either. I didn't expect this fan to take me all the way upwards over there. I thought it'd be interrupted or something. I'm gonna skip this. Keep trying to skip it at least. And these platforms are actually solid. I thought they were only one way. Nothing too frustrating yet. Yeah, I didn't expect that quarter on the left to actually be solid, non-solid. The other problem of using the super arrow is if it actually hits an enemy, you're out of luck. That said, I'm just gonna use the rush jet. I should have used that before. Oh, joyful. I'm actually just damage boosting to the enemy, never mind. It wasn't supposed to be solid. Let's do it this way, shall we? Now I know that now I'm armed with the fact that I know these platforms aren't solid. The usage of all these Yamasees makes the stage quite a bit more on the challenging side. It isn't too bad so far, but it feels like the stage difficulty is kind of going all over the place. And I really wish there was a bit more better progression in actually introducing these Gutsman platforms more in a safe environment. Not to mention the enemy's positioning can make this stage a lot harder than it usually is. Especially the missile enemies. Yeah, these Yamasees are always throwing me off. Let me just use the wire adapter. That's probably the one I should have been using all this time. There we go. Now we can get by. If there's one thing I notice about the stage's gimmick, I would say it's being blown around everywhere. Also, bad placement of enemies, or rather, annoying placement of enemies. Well, I suppose this stage is at least well introducing the fans, I suppose, for later. Well, maybe not well, but you know what I mean. Okay, we have this enemy, the ones that we have to push backwards. Or, of course, I can just freeze it in time and easily decimate it. At least the checkpoint placement of this stage isn't that bad. Yet, I suppose. And there are a fair amount of pickups, so I guess that balances out. Okay, I glitched the ground over there. That's a bit odd. Okay, it's one of these segments. Let me get the triple blade on the ready. And at last we're at the boss fight against Quint, okay. Well, at least this stage actually ends up with a boss fight, unlike most other stages. And it actually used a musical track that I don't recognize from Mega Man in the first place. I believe it's from another game entirely. Wow, 9 minutes. I didn't expect this stage to take that long, but because of all the deaths, especially in the second segment, and the first segment with the Apache Joes. I'm not sure if I could say the enemy challenges were easily placed or skippable. They were rather more frustrating. Oh, I think she's referring to the segment before the first checkpoint. Darn, I really should have actually paid attention and sniped the metal gumball machine. I didn't expect to just fly right through it there. Yeah, the beginning part of the Apache Joes and the ones with the guts lifts were the hardest parts of the stage. Well, I don't really mind the Apache Joe enemy, especially in comparison to Croakers, or rather Mega Man Endless Croakers, but it can be really hard to hit it without stuff like the Homing Bees, or Hornet Chaser. Or maybe even stuff like the Wheel Cutter. Oh, those were called Lyrics, never mind. I keep calling the Lyrics Yamasees, when in reality they're different enemies. And Jupi is right, you're forced to use stuff like the Hornet Chaser. And it's kind of hard to see the splits in the Gutsman platforms, or rather the holes. There should be black squares instead. Not to mention, because you're split between focusing on enemies and focusing on actually staying on the platform, you can easily fall. Wow, I didn't realize the screen actually scrolls during the boss fight. And to be fair, actually having playtesters is a common suggestion that would apply to most of the levels in this game. Wow, even the Met Dispenser can despawn? I didn't realize that would happen. Well, Gariri, I would still consider this to be a finished level, but it has awful level design. And I agree. Well, thankfully I didn't die after the first checkpoint. That would have been really problematic. I can see why this is infuriating, that's for sure, especially with all the deaths in the initial Apache Joe segment, as well as the Gutslift segment. Even when using the super arrow, it can be frustrating, and as you saw, even when I use the rush jet, you can accidentally die when rush jet despawns on those platforms. Wow, A-Spark gave us 1 out of 50. that's rather harsh. If anything, I would think that Giriri and Acebark would flip around the scores a bit. And Acebark really didn't like the Apache Joes, but then again, I actually found the Guts Lift segment to be more frustrating than the Apache Joe segment, mainly because the special weapons trivialized the Apache Joe segment more so than the Guts Lift segment. Well, because of how long this level took, I suppose this is a good time to end off this part. So in summary, I completed Tier 1, defeated the Tier 1 boss, and I finished the first 2 levels of Tier 2. In the next part, I'll delve deeper into Tier 2. Well then, thanks for watching, and have a nice day. Toodles!